Hey, it's Grandma Baker. I just wanted to read you a couple stories. These are by Dr. Seuss and come from a book called A Hat Full of Seuss. The first one is If I Ran a Zoo. It's a pretty good zoo, said young Gerald McGrew, and the fellow who runs it seems proud of it too. But if I ran the zoo, said Gerald McGrew, I'd make a few changes. That's what I'd do. The lions and tigers and that kind of stuff that have up here now are not quite good enough. You see, things like this is just any old zoo. They're awful old-fashioned. I want something new. So I'd open each cage, I'd unlock every pen, let the animals go and start over again. And somehow or other, I think I could find some beasts of a much, much more unusual kind. A four-footed lion's not much of a beast. The one in my zoo would have 10 feet at least. 5 legs on the left and 5 more on the right. Then people would stare and they'd say, "What a sight! The zookeeper's new keeper, Gerald's quite keen. That's the gall-darndest lion that I've ever seen." My new zoo, McGrew Zoo, would make people talk. My new zoo, McGrew Zoo, would make people gawk at the strangest odd creatures that ever did walk. I'll get for my zoo a new sort of a hen who roosts in another hen's top knot, and then another one roosts in the top knot of his, and another in his, and another in his, and so forth and upward and onward. Ah, gee whiz. But that's just a start. I'd do better than that. They'd see me next day in my zookeeper's hat, coming into my zoo with an elephant cat. They'd be so surprised that I'll swallow their gum. They'd ask what they see, my strange animal come. Where do you suppose he gets things like that from? His animals all have such very odd faces. I bet he must hunt them in very odd places. And that's what I'd do, said young Gerald McGrew. If you want to catch beasts you don't see every day, you have to go places quite out of the way. You have to get cold and you have to get wet. Up past the North Pole where the frozen wind squeals. I'll go and I'll hunt in my ski-daddle mobile and bring back a family of what do you know? And that's how my new zoo, McGrew Zoo, will grow. I'll hunt in the mountains of Zamba Montanta and help all who wear their eyes on Aslanta and capture a fine fluffy bird called the bustard who eats custard and sauces made of mustard, and also a very fine beast called the flustered who only eats mustard with sauce made of custard. I'll catch 'em in caves, and I'll catch 'em in brooks, and I'll catch 'em in crannies, and I'll catch 'em in nooks. They don't read about in geography books. I'll catch 'em in countries that no one can spell, like the country of Mada Fapada Fapel. And a country like that, if a hunter is clever, he'll hunt up some beasts that you never saw ever. I'll load up 5 boats with the family of jotes, whose feet are like cows but wear squirrel skin coats, and sit down like dogs but have voices like goats, excepting they can't sing in very high notes. And then I'll go to the wilds of Nantucket and capture a family of lunks in a bucket. Then people will say, "Now I like that boy heaps. His new zoo, McGrew Zoo, is growing by leaps. He captures them wild and he captures them meek. He captures them slim and he captures them sleek. What do you suppose he will capture next week?" I'll capture one tiny. I'll capture one cute. I'll capture a deer that no hunter will shoot. A deer that's so nice he could sleep in your bed. And if they weren't for those horns that he has on his head. And speaking of horns that are just a bit queer, I'll bring back a very odd family of deer. A mother and father, 2 sisters, a brother, whose horns are connected from one to the other. whose horns are so mixed they can't tell them apart, can't tell where they end, can't tell where they start. Each steer's mighty puzzled, he's never yet found if his horns are hers or the other way round. I'll capture them fat and I'll capture them scrawny. I'll capture a scraggly foot mulligandgani, a high-stepping animal fast as the wind from the blistering sands of the desert of Zind. The beast is the beast, this beast is the beast that's the bravest chieftains ride when they want to go fast to find someplace to hide. A mulligatawny is fine for my zoo, so it's a chieftain, I'll bring back one too. In the far western part of southeast North Dakota lives a very fine animal called the iota. I'll capture one who is even much finer in the northeastern west part of South Carolina. When people see him, they will say, "Now, by thunder, this Nuzu Magruzu is really a wonder." Most beasts are quite friendly, but still in some lands, some beasts are too dangerous to capture by hand. For those that are ugly and vicious and mean, I'll build a bad animal catching machine. It's rather expensive to build such a kit, but with it, a hunter can get quite a bit. A zoo has bugs. A zoo should have bugs, so I'll capture a thwirl whose legs are snarled up in a terrible snurl. And then I'll go out and I'll capture some chugs. Some keen shooter, mean shooter, bean shooting bugs. I'll go to the African island of Yurka and bring back zizzle-top tufted mazurka, a kind of canary with quite a tall throat. His neck is so long if he swallows an oat. For breakfast the first day of April, they say, it has to go down such a very long way that it gets to its stomach the 15th of May. I'll bag a big bug who is very surprising, a feller who has a propeller for rising and zooming around making cross-country hops from Texas to Boston with only 2 stops. Now that's the sort of bug is just tops. And when I've caught him, the next thing you know, I'll go and I'll capture a wild tic-tac-toe with X's for wins and zeros for losses. He'll look mighty good in the zoo of McGrew. I'll bring back a gusset, a gherkin, a gasket, also a gotcha from the wilds of Nantusket. And 8 Persian princes will carry the basket, but what their names are, I don't know, so don't ask it. In a cave in Khartoum lives a beast called the Natchet that no other hunter's been able to catch. He's hidden for years in this cave with a pout, and no one's been able to make him come out. But I'll coax him out with a wonderful meal that's cooked by my cooks in my cooker mobile. They'll fix up a dish that is just to his taste. 3 chicken croquettes made of library paste, then springnets with pinkles, shucks pickled and spiced, then baked at 600 degrees and then iced. It's mighty hard cooking to cook up such feasts, but that's how the Nuzu Magruzu gets beats. Then I'll go far away to the mountains of Tobask, near the river of Nobask, and I'll bring back an obask, a kind of thingambaboska who only eats rhubarbs and corn on the kabask. Then people will flock to my zoo and a mabask. McGrew, they will say, does a wonderful jobask. He hunts with such vim, he hunts with such vigor. His Nuzu Magruzu gets bigger and bigger. And speaking of birds, there's a Russian Pulaski, whose headski is redski and belly is blueski. I'll get one of them for my Zooski Magruski. Then the whole town will gasp Why, that boy never sleeps. No keeper before ever what has ever kept what he keeps. There's no telling what that young fellow will do, and then just to show them, I'll sell to Cartrew and bring back an itch-critch, a prep, and a prue, a nurgle, a nerd, and a seersucker too. I'll hunt in the jungles of Hipponohungus and bring back a flock of Bimbonobungus. The Bimbonobungus from Hipponohungus are better than those down in Dipponogadungus and smarter than those at a Nipponungus. And that's what I'll catch 'em in Hipponohungus instead of those others in Nungus and Dungus. And people will say when they see these bips bounding, the zookeeper, newkeeper's simply astounding. He travels so far that you'll think he would drop. What do you suppose this young fellow will stop? Stop? Well, I should. But I won't stop until I've catched a fizzle-madizzle, badizzle-madill, the world's biggest bird from the island of Gok, who only eats pine trees and spits out the bark. And boy, when I get him back home to my park, the whole world will say young McGrew's made his mark. He's built a zoo better than Noah's whole ark. These wonderful, marvelous beasts that he chooses have made him the greatest of all the McGrewses. Wow, they'll all cheer. What's the zoo must be worth? It's the gall-darndest zoo on earth. Yes, that's what I'd do, said Gerald McGrew. I'd make a few changes if I ran the zoo. Next book I want to read is called The Sneetches. Now, the star-bellied Sneetches has bellies with stars. The plain-bellied Sneetches have none upon theirs. Those stars weren't so big. They were really so small. You might think such a thing wouldn't matter at all. But because they had stars, all the star-bellied Sneetches would brag we're the best kind of Sneetches on the beaches. With their snoots in the air, they would snuff and they would snort. We will have nothing to do with the plain-bellied sort. And whenever they met some, when they were out walking, they'd hike right on past them without even talking. Well, the star-bellied children were out to play ball. Could a plain-bellied get in the game? Not at all. And you could only play if your bellies had stars, and the plain-bellied children had none upon theirs. Well, the star-bellied Sneetches had Frankfurter roasts, or picnics, or parties, or marshmallow toast. They never, ever invited the plain-bellied Sneetches. They left them out cold in the dark on the beaches. They kept them away, never let them come near, and that's how they treated them year after year. Then one day, it seemed, while the plain-bellied Sneetches were moping and doping along on the beaches, just sitting there wishing their bellies had stars, a stranger zipped up in the strangest of cars. "My friends," he announced in a voice clean and clear, "my name is Sylvester McMonkey McBean, and I've heard of your troubles. I've heard you're unhappy. But I can fix that. I'm the fix-it-upper chappie. I've come here to help you. I have what you need. And my prices are low, and I work at great speed. And my week is 100% guaranteed." Then quickly Sylvester McMonkey McBean put together a very peculiar machine. And he said, "You want stars like a star-bellied Sneetch? My friends, you can have them for $3 each. Just pay me your money and hop right on board." So they clambered inside. Then the big machine roared, and it clunked, and it bonked, and it jerked, and it burked, and out bopped them about. But the thing really worked. When the plain-bellied Sneetches popped out, they had stars. They actually did. They had stars upon theirs. Then they yelled at the ones who had stars at the start, "We're exactly like you. You can't tell us apart. We're just the same now, you snoodly old smarties, and now we can go to your Frankfurter parties." "Good grief," groaned the ones who had stars at the first. "We're still the best Sneetches, and they are the worst. But now how in the world will we know?" They all frowned. "In which kind is what, or the other way round?" Up came McBean with a very quick wink. And he said, things are not quite as bad as you think. So don't you know who's who? This is perfectly true, but come with me, friends. Do you know what I'll do? I'll make you again the best sneetches on the beaches, and it only cost you $10 eaches. Belly's stars are no longer in style, said McBean. What you need is a trip through the star-off machine. This wonderful contraction will take off your stars so you won't look like sneetches who have them on theirs. And that handy machine, working very precisely, removed all their stars from their tummies quite nicely. Then with the snoot in the air they paraded about, and they opened their beaks and they let out a shout. We know who is who, now there isn't a doubt. The best kind of sneetches are sneetches without. Then of course those with stars got all frightfully mad. To be wearing a star was now frightfully bad. Then of course old Sylvester McMonkey Big Bean invited them into his star-off machine. Then of course from then on, as you probably guessed, things really got in a horrible mess. All the rest of the day, all those wild screaming beaches, the fixer-up chappie kept fixing up sneetches. Off again, on again, in again, out again. Through the machine they raced, around and around again, changing their stars every minute or two. They kept paying money, they kept running through, up until neither the plane nor the starbellies knew whether this one was that one, or that one was this one, or which one was what one, or what one was who. Then, with every last cent of the money was spent, the fixer-up chappie packed up, and he went. And he laughed as he drove in his car on the beach. They will never learn. No one can teach a sneetch. But McBean was quite wrong. I'm quite happy to say that the sneetches got on quite smart on that day. That day they decided that sneetches are sneetches and no kind of sneetch is the best on the beaches. That day, all the sneetches forgot about stars and whether they had one or not upon theirs. That's what I have for you now. Hatful of Seuss. I hope you enjoyed listening to Grandma read you bedtime stories. Good night and sweet dreams. Love you lots.